Okay, so let me start off this video by telling you this much. Welcome to my very first CCC. And no, it does not stand for Canadian Canoe Convention. I mean, I really hope it does not. But for Casual Camera Conclusion, and I mean, it's pretty much all in the name. I'm gonna casually show you a bunch of photos and then casually talk about it, let you know what I think so far, but not as a photographer or camera expert, but just from someone's perspective who has reviewed phones for about 6 years and, well, with time, used a lot of phones' cameras. And today that would be the one of the Xiaomi Mi 9. And before we are going to the actual camera qualities, we have to check the camera app first. And if you've ever seen a camera app from Xiaomi, I guess you know what to expect and you could skip this part, but in case you want to see everything, we'll go through all of these things. So let's check all the modes first. We have slow motion, we have short video, we have video, photo, 48 megapixel mode, which is definitely a thing that only Xiaomi has on the Mi 9 so far. Then portrait mode, night, panorama, and pro. Now if we go into the photo options, we can see here we have settings. We can set timer, square, tilt shift, straighten it up, and group selfie. If we go into the settings, let's just go through all of these real quick. Save location info, camera sounds, save previous mode, quick snap mode. We can mirror the front camera in this case. Then add timestamps, device watermark, a custom watermark, show the grid lines, correct face distortions on group photos, focus and shot, scan QR codes, original photos to be saved as well, press and hold the shutter button, camera frame we can change, as you can see here, 16:9 or 4:3. Picture quality we can change from high standard to low. Volume button functionality, shutter, shutter countdown, zoom and volume. Then we have anti-banding options. We have auto exposure, contrast, saturation, sharpness, and we can skip all this back. Now if you go into video, those look a little bit different. Here we have also time-lapse, as you can see. Settings, very similar, but in terms of actual features, we have, for example, image stabilization, we have video quality, so 4K 30, 4K 60, 1080p, 30, 60, and HD. We can also change the video encoder from H.264 to H.265, time-lapse interval, and that would be pretty much already it. So these would have been the main options. So now you know how this app works. As you can see, you can swipe through the modes, but you can't swipe, for example, through the main cam or to the front cam. As you can see, this works with this button. Otherwise, everything else, we have also the AI camera mode. We have dynamic shots. We have different presets that we can use here. Then we have HDR on and off. The same goes for the flash. And then here, for example, just so you know that, in case you didn't know, we have the wide angle mode. So you can see ultra wide angle mode, then the regular wide mode. And here is the 2x zoom. I actually like the way it works here. For example, if you just want to quickly switch through wide angle and ultra wide angle, you can use this by this button. On all other cameras that I've seen so far, you usually switch through all of them with one button. So this is actually easily accessible because the zoom button I'll get into later is not really that great of a thing. So what I would say what we should do right now is check casually all the photos that I've shot. Starting off with low light quality, and this is actually the ultra low light part. So this is the picture taken just normally with the cam, and this is the night mode. I mean, the one issue that I have with the night mode in general, that it looks like someone puts a big extreme light and shines on the subject, because you don't really get more details. You don't really get more sharpness out of it or anything. It just looks brighter. It looks like they raised the sharpness a little bit to try to get it sharper, a little more details. And then, yeah, they just boost the contrast. And you will see this later on even more so. I would say this is maybe the one picture that I would say looks better. But all the other ones, like for example here, just a big as light. It just looks like you would do this in post. It does not actually raise the details or anything, in my opinion. And here with the zoom, yeah. Just forget the zoom on this camera and any other phone I think so far, at least the ones that don't have a proper optical one. But this is not really a good zoom camera. Here, for example, normal shot, and then again, just a harsh light on it. So I'm not really impressed with the night mode, because it looks quite decent on its own already. And this is in relation, obviously, to all the other phones, because I'm gonna give this in low light 4 stars, and you might say, why? It doesn't look all that good. Well, 4 means good. Good in terms of comparison for other phones, because this is, yeah, just something that we get still these days. And there is obviously a lot of room left for the better ones, but this is what Xiaomi gets here. For example, this is with the wide angle, with the ultra wide angle. You can see that it doesn't pick up a lot of light if you use the normal one. It gets definitely already noticeably brighter. Here, for example, the same thing again. And if we now go a little bit wider, it gets dark again. And then some normal low light shots, this time without the flash, and I haven't turned on the light in this room, so therefore it looks worse than it usually did. And then again, I mean, this just tries to sharpen and over contrast, and I'm not gonna knock off the camera. It's not really better besides on a few cams that really know how to do night mode, like for example Huawei and Google do. So, for example here's the example that I meant, this. It just, for example, as you can see, gets darker, but it doesn't really get more details or anything like that. And it's also visible here with the over sharpening and so on. So that would have been that. And here once again, wide angle, ultra wide angle, and then the normal wide angle. So let's get outside, and this is the first pic that I shot that I have no idea how it turned out this way, because I did this shot like 10 times, and not any other time it looked like this, like super detailed, super contrasty. It looks usually completely different. But let's get into this. Now this camera has the main feature of having 48 megapixels, and this is a 48 megapixel shot. Now here's the weird part. This is the normal shot. And I've tried to zoom in as much as possible, and I did the shot once again here, and also without. And I simply cannot really see a big difference, if at all. I actually don't see a really one. I mean, I've tried it, and most times actually the normal one actually turned out better, just because I didn't shake so much. So if you have a steady hand, then both look pretty much the same, and if you shake on one it just looks worse, but it's not like the 48 megapixels looks really better. And just one thing that I wanted to say about the low light cam, since this is on Snapdragon 855, there will be a pixel mod that will give you better low light shots, because Google just has figured that out way better. Now, but we are only gonna review obviously the normal cam today. This is a wide angle shot, and I'm gonna show you what I don't like so much about the whole free camera thing, the array, because wide angle, normal, and then zoomed in. And as you can see, just the difference from normal to zoomed in, the colors don't look the same, the brightness and the exposure doesn't look the same, and I'm gonna show this later on, because they didn't quite get all three cameras to get similar shots, which for example the S10 does way better. But 48 megapixels, yeah, I don't really see a benefit of it yet. Here once again, for example, with the AI mode in general just boosts colors. If you want that, nice, but I have to tell you this, if you don't use AI mode, I actually think that the colors are very, very accurate, especially comparing it to the S10, which never looks real. And here once again, here you can see the difference between non-HDR and HDR. And for some reason, actually HDR seems to deliver less dynamic range. So if you want a lot of dynamic range, actually use the normal one, because pictures out of the box actually have quite a nice high dynamic range. Here, for example, a picture once again. Quality looks pretty nice. I have to say that this is, and I always said this, Xiaomi isn't quite on a flagship level. This time I have to say they're as close as they never were before, but I'm still not gonna give this 5 stars, because I've just noticed with other cams, like for example the S10 that I have here right now, that it doesn't maybe produce more realistic colors or anything like that, but sometimes, for example, things like the free cameras all look the same, and then there are sometimes just more details. But for a general purpose, you could see this as a flagship level camera at this time. For example, here once again, see the switch here from, yeah, the cameras don't look all the same. This, for example, is AI mode once again, or HDR actually. And then, but look at this picture. This looks super detailed, super sharp. This is what a camera definitely is. But especially if you use landscape photos, then you see that some cameras just are able to deliver a little more details. And yeah, that's the one thing. This is also wide angle, normal. And then, as you can see here, how much brighter it got with the zoom. So the zoom is always brighter, but definitely less sharp. And this is one picture that I don't get at all, because this picture was taken just a few seconds before this one. And it looks like it was taken at completely different times of day. So sometimes maybe exposure levels aren't all correct. This once again normal, and this with, I guess, the AI mode. And this is the last picture before we are going into low light for selfies, because now we are taking a look at a selfie camera. Super low light, just a street light. Looks okay. With the flash, it looks like a completely different picture actually. But then it gets usable, because if you just look at it like this, not a whole lot of details, but actually not that bad. And with the flash, colors change a little bit, but then it gets definitely noticeably sharper. But outside, I have to say, and that's why I'm gonna give this main camera, the front camera, 5 stars, because pictures in terms of saturation look very realistic. If you use the AI mode, obviously don't, but I don't really am a fan of that. And then you can see the bokeh mode works actually pretty good. Not always, because if you, for example, use the stage lighting mode, you can see the bump on my head. That is just not a thing. And for example, also this time here, it will cut off my ear. But I mean, if you just use the bokeh mode for the background, it actually looks pretty decent. And the pictures on its own, if you don't do anything with a bokeh mode or a stage mode or anything like that, have a nice amount of details. And it's a fixed zoom, yes, okay. But usually you take pictures from a further distance anyway to get your whole upper body at least on the shot. And then the quality is actually super nice. And I'm actually very, very pleased with those selfie pictures, especially also since it only takes up a little bit of a notch and no extra cutout. Now, what happened here, I don't know. The same thing as here. Not quite sure what I tried to do for use, because I think I used portrait mode, so I guess something worked wrong. And then, for example, these pics now are selfies, but done with the main camera. And if I would zoom in, which I'm not gonna do actually, because I think I would stop by recording, they are actually not better in terms of quality if you zoom in, especially in lower light. I mean, obviously you will get better quality out in better lighting situations, but if you don't have too much light like here, you can actually absolutely use the front-facing cam and almost sacrifice nothing comparing to using it with the main cam. But obviously the main cam is better. So what I want to show you now are the videos. Let me start off with ultra low light here, which is, I would say, in ultra low light situations pretty much unusable in 4K 30, because this is an ugly pixelated mess. I think we can all agree on that. Yeah, autofocus gets a little bit out of whack. I mean, yeah. But I also have to say that a lot of cameras don't really do much better, and this is something that you're definitely gonna see in the S10 review. But let's get to the next one. This now, 1080p, front camera, not a whole lot of light. That's actually usable. I mean, it's not great, but obviously, as you can see, it is super dark. Absolutely. It actually gets quite okay. Handles it quite, but especially if we are in good lighting situations. I would really love to give this 5 stars. And if you have no problem with the lack of stabilization, if you have steady hands like I had in this case here, you actually get a pretty damn pleasing, almost perfect picture, because colors look right, sharpness looks great, at 1080p, and it doesn't actually even need 4K. Colors, brightness, exposure, everything looks great. But when I tried, for example, the same test with a selfie stick, the shakiness was way more obvious, and then you just notice that there is no EIS, which would have been amazing. So if this would have had maybe 4K or image stabilization, or maybe even both, then it would have been absolutely killer. So that's why I'm just gonna give it just 4.5 stars. But if you use it on a gimbal, or if you have steady hands, then you could say yes, 5 stars. And then 4K 60. As you can see, this is done with a selfie stick, so a little bit shaky. There is no stabilization in 4K 60, and yeah, I would say this is unusable. This is unusable because this is a crazy shaky mess, and you'll get a headache quite soon. I mean, if you don't move it, if you have it standing on a tripod or on a gimbal, I would maybe even give this 5 stars, because the quality, if you just have slow movements like now, actually is amazing. Okay, here, autofocus had some trouble, but the S10 did as well. So maybe a hard object, I don't know. Last year it usually worked with most cameras, but this time it didn't so much. But autofocus generally works well. Everything is pretty pleasing in terms of quality. But let's check the one that you should actually use, which is 4K 30. The stabilization isn't bad. I mean, it gets like on quick movement a little bit jittery, but it stays very nice and stable. And as you can see, this is nice stabilization. It doesn't look like wobbling all the time. It doesn't shake. And it still looks, I would say, natural enough, because I've seen some stabilizations that look like always with a gimbal with hard movements. This looks still smooth enough. Quality looks pleasing. So I'm gonna give this also just 4.5 stars, but just barely. Because, for example, I think personally something like an iPhone does even better photos. The S10, maybe a little bit sharper in some situations and a little bit better stabilization. But what this has definitely going for it is very natural colors, which the S10 in general doesn't have. So here, I'm actually pretty pleased, and it just barely missed the mark. And I kinda can't give it 5 stars because we are so early in the year already, and better video cameras just will come up. So I'm already thinking a little bit about the future here already. So let me summarize this real quick. Low light gets 4 stars for me, because the sounds may be too good if you look at the pictures, but considering all the other cameras that I know and how they should look, 4 stars is fair. Front, top. For pictures, if you use just the bokeh mode, with that clarity, with that exposure, with the sharpness, with the amount of details, 5 stars is absolutely not too much. Let me stop this because this irritates me. Then front video, 4.5 stars, just because it doesn't have 4K or stabilization. If it would have had either one, chances would have been way better. Then we have main camera, 4.5 stars, but just barely missed it. Because we got a lot of features, which is cool. We have the wide angle lens. We have the zoom lens, forget that. So we have wide angle and normal lens, or whatever like they want to call it, like ultra wide angle and wide angle. And pictures turn out really good. Sometimes you can see that the AI mode is pretty, doing a pretty spartanic job, because it either boosts colors, or if it's off, it doesn't boost colors. So it doesn't really artificially do anything, in my opinion. But normal pictures turn out really nice, great colors, and everything, sharpness is good. Sometimes, especially in landscape, details get a little bit lost, but otherwise it's a pretty great cam. Main video is super nice. Stabilization 4K 30 is nice. In 4K 60 it's not there, like on most cameras so far. So with 4K 60 stabilization would have been nice, but otherwise we don't see any artifacting going on anymore, so I'm happy here. And then about the mic quality, I'm gonna at the end of this video just attach you the sample clip that I have, and you'll notice that the microphone quality isn't that bad as it was in my preview, because I was further away. So if you are from normal half stretched arms distance, the sound is usable. It's not great, but the video, you can see that about that, and then tell me what you think about it. So I'm just gonna end this video now with the sample, and before that I'm gonna wish you a nice day, and we'll see us next time. Bye. Okay, so this would be the front-facing video cam of the Xiaomi Mi 9. If you've seen my preview, you know that it actually looks already pretty good. In lower light, it gets a little bit softer to kind of get out of the graininess. The frame rate, though, is stable. Sound, well, it's not that bad as it seemed there in the preview, because I was further away. With a normal distance, it sounds a little bit better, but it's still not really a good mic. But crop is fine if you hold it like this. The problem is that the camera has no stabilization on the front, and if you don't hold it steady, it gets very, very shaky. That's what I've noticed, especially using the selfie stick.